welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup. I'm Megan Rounds, and I welcome you to today's show. Maria Rodriguez, and she wears many hats. In her words, she says she poses as an IT specialist by day, and then she's also mom to 2 beautiful daughters and 3 cats. She's a Harley rider. That's the connection to the hog story in a very loose way. And she's also an active light worker. Hi, Maria. If she could have known that, or if she would have known that dancing was, hi guys, if she would have known that dancing was an option when choosing a profession when she was younger, she would have become a professional dancer. And it remains a favorite pastime of hers, in addition to riding her Harley and enjoying all things metaphysical, from reading to watching sci-fi and paranormal movies. I am really making up strange words today. Okay, so watching sci-fi and paranormal movies, to her high engagement within the Lightworkers Lab and subgroups as a moderator. And she's also a host of her own show, which goes live today at 2 p.m. Central Time here in the main lab. And it's called Saturday Sesh with Maria. Today, I noticed she's talking about solfeggio frequency, which I've never heard of before, which sounds really fascinating to me, and the difference between empaths and highly sensitive people. So be sure to check out her show if you can, or the replay. Maria's been a member of the Lightworkers Lab since it had around 150 people, so somewhere between 2 and 3 years, we're not really sure. She considers herself a jack of all trades when it comes to her modalities, but she'd summarize her main gifts as psychic, medium, and healer. Although Maria has planted her roots in Carroll Streams, Illinois, she would love to be in permanent travel mode. Once her girls are old enough, perhaps she'll make that dream a reality. So please give a warm and energetic welcome to the wonderful Maria Rodriguez. Hi, Maria. How does it feel to have that introduction while you're sitting here listening to it live?
Hey, Megan, you are breaking up. I'm not sure if it's my reception.
Oh, no.
Everything was fine up until now, until I joined in. So I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if unplugging this. It shouldn't make a difference. Let me just try to.
Okay. Maybe it's my earbuds.
I'm hearing 2 words
or
something. Keep talking,
okay.
so I can make sure this is working for me.
Okay. Well, Maria, I'm happy to have you on the show, and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us. How did that work? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Having me about that.
Okay, so
Not really.
is it, you know what, let me try that on my end too.
Okay.
How is the sound?
No, you're good. You're good right now. I unplugged. I think you're good for right now.
Oh.
I don't know if it was my earbuds or whatever,
Okay.
So sorry about that.
Let me plug mine back in since our dogs are very barky. Okay, so somebody said they think it might be on your end, so let's plug these.
Yeah.
Okay now?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Good. Well, and thanks everyone for your patience with the technical things. It is Mercury in retrograde, and this happens. So it happens even sometimes when it isn't Mercury in retrograde. It just plain happens. So thank you. And I'm glad it works now. So welcome to the show, Maria. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And so I read this very long introduction for you. And when I read these introductions, and like yours especially, you're a mom of 2, you work full-time. I am assuming that's full-time. And then you love to dance and ride a motorcycle. And you have all this, I mean, I see you all the time in the Lightworkers Lab. You're going live, you fill in for other people, I've noticed, and you're in all of these different subgroups. How do you find that kind of time? How do you do that? And then I'll go into the main questions I asked you.
I don't know. Just make the time, I guess. I don't know. It's half the time I feel like if I'm not doing something, I feel like I'm not doing anything. So I can't keep myself going and just make the time. I don't even know sometimes, but it's also kind of a bad thing because you can burn yourself out, and I do burn myself out quite often. So I do have to take time to remember to, have some R&R, frequently. So.
It's, I think that even just within our culture, generally speaking, it's always been a high emphasis on doing and not so much on caring for ourselves. And I can completely relate to what you say, and especially to that kind of roller coaster of well, there's high energy moments and then low energy moments. And for me, I've decided that really is my cycle. And it's not so much that I want to overwork myself, but there are times when I'm really motivated and other times when I just feel like crashing and watching 3 movies, you know, do a marathon or something. And I mean, a movie marathon, not a running one.
I can so relate. I can so relate to that, definitely. I can do, yeah, there'll be like one day out of the week where I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to sit in bed in front of the TV. But at the back of my mind, I'm like, I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. And so it's kind of like a never ending loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we definitely have to take the time to self-care, and I'm really bad about that.
Oh, well, hopefully that's something that starts to come more naturally, because I think you do some really great things from what I've seen and heard. So,
thank you.
It's my pleasure. Okay, so the question that I usually start out with as the first one is your path to the Lightworkers Lab. How did you get there, and kind of what transpired to lead you in this direction?
Well, what led me to the Lightworkers Lab was Crystal Ann Compton, our founder of the group. I was following her YouTube videos actually, and I did catch wind of one of her classes, and I believe the class that I wanted to take was everything. I think it was everything psychic, or I don't remember the exact name. I think is You Are Psychic or Everything Psychic. So I definitely, after following her for a little while, I jumped on that because that was actually something I wanted to like do more better in. And so I signed up for that, and that's when I caught wind of the Lightworkers Lab, and that was it was a very small group at the time. It was about maybe, I want to say 150, 200 people, something like that. And I want to say about, I like you, want to keep saying that I've been like here for 2 years, and I think it's longer. It has to be really more than 2 years. So like since then, that's what led me to the Lightworkers Lab, and I've been a member since. I was pretty much a wallflower for a very long time, just kind of absorbing everything and not really engaging in conversations, just, you know, every now and again, like always liking, and if I had anything to contribute, I kind of jump in on the conversation, but I was pretty much on the backside, just absorbing everything, and took as much information as I could. So, and since then I took a couple more of her classes, and the knowledge kept, you know, getting absorbed, and it's a snowball from there.
So before, or like, there must have been something that drew you to her YouTube videos to start with. Were there things that were going on in your life, or have you always really felt that connection? How did that all transpire?
I found her because I was really into channeling. The channeling was the thing that channeling was actually what started me actively into the spiritual path. Amongst other things, you know, but that was the first thing that really drew me, that I was really attracted to, wanting to do. It lit my fire, so to speak, ignited that passion, and so that was one of the first modalities that I wanted to study. And I've, you know, along the way you find teachers and you find people to follow, and then I found her, and I knew that she channeled, and unfortunately, by the time I found her, she wasn't giving readings at the time. I don't think. But I, you know, caught wind of her YouTube, so I followed her because, you know, you have, like, you know how they say when you want to master or learn something, you follow the folks, or surround yourself with the folks that do the work or do the same thing. And that's how I found her. So and that's pretty much what drew me to her, because she has a very down to earth vibe, and very welcoming, warm vibe, and she just I just liked her immediately, you know. So
that's great. So then, if you're comfortable doing it, I'd really love to hear about how did you discover that, I mean, that channeling was something you wanted to do. Have you always used your psychic and intuitive gifts through life, and have you always really been attuned to those, or is it something that you kind of awakened into?
I was always like, I pretty much used, just like you, how you say that you used it, but you didn't realize you were using it. You know, you had those intuitive faculties. I didn't think much of it. I was able to anticipate people's next moves, anticipate who they were, Just and this is the way my thought process was back then. It was more of anticipation. I didn't give it credence. It was my intuition. So I knew about, like, I can tell you what a person was, what they're going to do. I always was having to be alert in my environment growing up, and so I had to anticipate that. I would feel the energy of places even by looking at it. I would be able to also, my mood would shift too, depending on who I was with. And I didn't realize that that's what was affecting me. So it's been with me for a very long time. And moving forward is just something that was a part of my life just the whole entire time. I just took it for granted, so I guess you would say. You know, it was just something that was there, and you didn't think anything of it. And a lot of times I talk myself out of it. I think, Maria, you're imagining this? Why would this come? Like, you get like maybe some information, you know, along the way throughout your day about so-and-so or some stranger out there, and you're like, why am I thinking this? And where's that coming from? And like, wow, I have a vivid imagination, you know? And it wasn't done purposefully. It was just something that happened. It was like very spontaneous, you know? So when I had I have two daughters, as you mentioned, and when I was pregnant with my second daughter, I started feeling this urge to pursue my spirituality and to take it to the next level. And just to kind of back up a little bit, when I first got married, because I'm divorced now, but when I was married, I married my high school sweetheart, and I was with him for about 21 years. And he believed in the stuff, but he was not very comfortable with it. So I had to stifle everything and not show him what I was into. He wouldn't want to see crystals or cards or anything of the sort. So I had to nix all that. And so had I had the support, though, like in my 20s, I probably would have gotten into it. But fast forward, it was probably in my late 30s, and I felt that pull, that urge to take it to the next level. And I felt, actually, funny thing is I felt like time was running out and I needed to do this now. And so that's what catapulted me into the path. And then the first books that came to me was just about, with angels and, energy healing. And then I got brave and started reading up on the channeling. And actually, there was a story behind that too, because I found a meditation that I had to do with deep breathing, and I was already reading that channeling book at the time, and I wasn't intending anything really. So I was rocking my baby, my second child. She was probably like maybe 5 months old, and I had a crystal that one of my coworkers had gifted me. And my coworker at the time, well, she is a shamanic practitioner, which I had just found out at that time too. So I was rocking my baby back and forth, and I had this crystal in hand, and I was like zoning out. I was kind of like in that in-between state, how you can kind of fall asleep. And I started receiving information, which freaked me out. And I just snapped out of it. And I went to Google and started Googling, and for days I couldn't find the information that I found, but I finally figured it out because I wasn't like spelling the names right or whatever I received correctly, and then I finally figured it out. And that was my first experience with receiving the information as a channel. And so that pretty much started that passion, that urge, to pursue channeling.
Wow. That's such a, thank you for telling that story. That I love to hear the how things evolve, and so it's like, I can relate to so many things that you were talking about. I wrote down motherhood induced spirituality, and I don't know if that's really a thing, but it kind of sounds like that.
It sometimes is.
Yeah. And, the whole thing about anticipation, you highlighted that word. And, so I am assuming you're an empath, because I don't know if you identify as that. Okay. But I've been thinking a lot about that, because, and I know you're going to talk about this in your show, so I don't want to touch upon the stuff that you may want to touch upon there. But I've been thinking about that anticipation, and that, I think that a lot of times empaths develop a coping mechanism, in a sense of, because you have to be, I wasn't raised in an abusive environment, but I was raised in an environment of high judgment, and a place where either I did well or I didn't. That success failure thing runs deep with me because of it, because it's like I was always striving for praise of accomplishment from a perfectionist who didn't know how to give that because he was raised in that environment. But I learned about, and he was moody and still, I mean, he's really not as moody now, he's still alive, but both of my parents are pretty moody. So I learned to anticipate their moods so I could relate to them in a way that would keep harmony as much as possible. And so I just really resonate with that word. And that time is running out part too. I went through that. In fact, I went to a doctoral program because I thought time was running out. But I went to that program, and it was in that program that there was this obscure, we called ourselves the guinea pig group, because this one professor was putting together a small group of hand-picked students to participate in what she called energetics. And so she picked us, and we were part of this group that then learned about energy. And then we learned, I mean, we expanded beyond that. She didn't call it spirituality, but it was interesting because it was in a Catholic university, and she ultimately created an institute for a time. She's no longer there, but it was so interesting that there was this energetics institute within a Catholic university, because usually those two don't coincide. And I kind of think it's because the university didn't really know what it meant or what it was, because, it used to be considered heretical by some in that religion. And so it's like, this is so, there's a paradox, and I'm loving it. But that time is running out part, I think, really shifted my, I went and got all of my degrees within 10 years. So it's like but I was, like 30 when I started that path. So it was like, oh no, time's running out. I can't mess around anymore. I have to go and get these degrees and accomplishments and all these other things, like that card that I read earlier had suggested. Is like, that was me. And then energetics created a humongous shift, because I went to, my husband's twin brother had passed away, and he's British. We went to Britain, and nobody his mom cried a little, and his sister tried not to cry, but did a little bit. But for the most part, it was me the whole time I'm there, and I had only met his brother twice, crying constantly. Just the whole time I'm there, I'm crying. And, it was only the second time I'd met the family, really. And so they must have really gotten this great impression of the crying American. But I went back, and I'm like, why did I cry so much? I mean, it's really sad. It's tragic how he died, and very sad for the whole thing. But I cried way more than all of these people who are so much closer to him. And then somebody said emotional sponge, and that's what got me on the whole empath thing, because I'm like, oh, and that changed my life. I mean, nothing's been the same since.
That's the life of an empath for sure. Because I for a long time I thought there was something wrong with me growing up. I mean, I didn't know the definition of bipolar, but I thought I was bipolar. So just the switch of moods just suddenly.
Moods, and I used to get really upset when my father would, it sounds worse because there are people here who have had far worse experiences that may tap into that. But for me, I was just getting yelled at for something. You didn't really like people to push back on his authority, and I did. And so I'd get yelled at, and then I'd cry, and I'd get so mad at myself for doing that, because I didn't want to show him my emotions. But I had so much, I wasn't necessarily feeling his emotions at that time. I had some inner rage that developed as a result of that. But I'd turn beet red, and tears would be streaming down, and I can laugh about it now, but I kind of imagine what I must have looked like at the time, and I don't know how my parents received that stuff, because it's like, why does she look like a tomato right now about to burst? What does that mean? I don't think they actually thought that far about it, but the whole, it's like
That's kind of funny. That is kind of funny that you say that, because a lot of a common theme, or the one theme that was most prevalent in my life, was to be strong, not show emotion, and to keep it all in. And I thought it was maybe a product of my environment, because I had to always have a poker face on, and just so nobody knew what I was feeling. And so that I can relate to that. Definitely. So that's
and I left an environment where my mom's side of the family has, like, my grandfather's Spanish, my grandmother's Scots-Irish. There's a lot of emotion in that family, and moved to one that has a highly German, Swiss, and British environment, they repressed. Okay, they were not emotional people really at all. And my mom introduced some of that into the family, but for me, I definitely brought that my mom's side of the family into the picture in a way nobody could deal with. So I already started showing emotion, and then when they're like, "Don't do that anymore," I didn't really know how to do it. That's in part why I think I did the whole escape thing mentally, because it was like I didn't feel like I belonged. And then I was a part of a second, that's my mom's second relationship, and they had children together. So I'm like 8 and 10 years younger or older than my sisters. So I was an in-betweener by a big gap, which perpetuated that whole thing. You know, it's like, okay, I'm just going to go in la la land while they all argue and do whatever they're going to do, you know. Then I can detach.
Yeah.
So anyway, you had mentioned reading a bunch of different books, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I should probably start giving notice to guests before they come on. But if you remember the name of any of those books, I can add them to the show notes. And if any are top of mind now, I'll just write them down.
Okay. Well, the one that I've actually picked up recently, and I think it was just released a few months ago, was it's by Sherry Dillard, and the title of the book is You Are Psychic. I always like to kind of go back to the basics to make sure I am always doing what I need to do to make the best and give people quality readings and just come from a place of authenticity. And as I was going, it's an audiobook, by the way, so I'm listening to this whenever I can in my car. But it's a very good book for those of you that want to learn how to give psychic readings, how to connect with yourself. She gives you different types of psychic types, I guess you would call it. She calls it psychic types. And so you may be more spiritual psychic. And it's also equivalent for mediumship too, because she also has another book out there about mediumship, and I don't remember. I believe You Are Medium, but I'm not sure if that's the name of the book.
Sure.
You have mental, spiritual. You have the feeler, which I believe, I'm not too sure how she terms it, but it may be the physical. Okay, physical, psychic, and then there's another one. So you got the mental, spiritual. You got the physical, psychic, and there is another one I'm not remembering at the moment. But so basically, you probably find you probably find a little bit of yourself in all of those types, but you're probably more of one than the other. And eventually, if you continue to do the practices that she recommends, you will be proficient in all of them. You'll be like more of a well-rounded psychic. So she gives a lot of great exercises and a lot of great advice. She's touched on some things that I learned on my own, but I've never had anybody else, any of my other teachers or mentors, mentioned in my training. So I think it's a really good book.
Awesome. I haven't heard of it before, but I really love the idea of looking at, I like books that have types to them. I think there's always a risk of people hanging on one type, like assessments like the Myers-Briggs and things like that. People sometimes say, well, I'm this. I tend to discourage that, but I think it's helpful to better understand our individual mix. And so like here in the Lightworkers Lab, I'm a part of some groups where they practice mediumship, and I try it. I've only tried it a little bit, and so far I don't feel that's a particularly developed thing, but channeled writing is becoming one that's developing really strongly for me. And somebody had said, well, maybe eventually you can start, just channeling, I don't know if you do it by voice where you're just, and Lauren Antuofermo does, she just receives and can speak it. And there's a part of me that's like, I don't know if I want to take it that far. I kind of enjoy the channeled writing piece. But just finding, I also feel like I have, to me, the way I always have used my intuitive aspect was I've had 50 million jobs, really. I don't know that it's even that much of an exaggeration. But when I started a professional career, it was in human resources, and I did a lot of interviewing of people as a part of my job. And what I started to notice after the fact was how often I used that intuitive hit to know what kind of questions to ask, to really relate to the person. The empath part really played in well. I'd see that there's a lot of people who are healers, and then I think that HR is another one that's really a high that invites in highly sensitive people and empaths and intuitive people naturally without, they don't ever put those on the job descriptions, but maybe they ought to.
Right. Right.
Might have a more compassionate HR group in general in some places, but I'm not in that profession anymore. Yeah. So, and that's probably why, because go ahead.
They say that, for intuitives, you end up having like a lot of jobs, a lot of roles that you play. That's going to come into play and help you. It's all like training that you have per se to do the work, when you end up doing like the service to others in the form of spiritual work, whether it's intuitive, counseling, whatever you want to call it. But I want to say that channeling is a form of mediumship. So you are doing the mediumship type aspect of it, and it maybe at this point you're not drawn to do like the evidential stuff, but it may evolve. Not that it is a level up or down. It's just a path.
Yeah.
And you may take that branch. It depends on where you're at, and you probably are not feeling that right now. You know what I mean?
I'd say that if you mean by evidential, the ones where we're connecting to spirit guides, where we are tapping into, like some people do missing persons cases and things like that. Those are the ones that people have invited me into practice, and I tapped into something, but it wasn't for anybody in the group, and nor anybody that I could think of to ask about it. So I'm like, okay, I saw this thing, and this was some kind of a hit, but I don't know what and where. But I'm not quite comfortable with that particular piece. The channeling, so far I've channeled archangels and like Council of Light, and tapped into Lemurians who I've never even heard of before. So I had to actually, it's like, okay, so
yeah, that's mediumship. Like the evidential is just, there's different like labels and different areas, if you want to call it. But there's like the evidential is when you're in speaking of spirit guides, it is evidential, but the formal or the common meaning out there is when you're connecting directly to a person's past loved one, like mom, dad, sister, brother, and you're giving them evidences of that you are connecting with their loved one. And then the non-traditional way of mediumship would be connecting to spirit guides and angels or whatever. But like I said, it's all labels. Like it could be, I don't like labels.
We share that.
So, but I mean, right. You connecting, like let's say if you're doing like a missing person case and you're connecting to the spirits that are guiding you to, find out what the evidences of how, or like the breadcrumbs to lead the people to, or the cops to find out, who did what and, solve the case. That is, in essence, I would consider, not evidence in form of like cop, police evidence, but evidences for spirit. But that's all mediumship. You're connecting with spirit. So yeah, you're doing it.
Awesome. Well, good.
You're doing it your way.
It's kind of funny. I think it comes and then I recognize it. So it's like it has to be here and something. Yeah. With the channeled writing, I just got to a point where I don't even know how it started, other than I feel it in my throat when I haven't done it and I need to. That's almost like this strong sign that, okay, we've got something to say and you can't ignore it anymore, or you're not going to be able to talk.
Oh yeah.
I'm curious, Maria, do you believe that there's a kind of spiritual progression? And by progression, like you had pointed out, I don't think one is better than the other, but do you, and I'm just asking this as a personal viewpoint, so that we enter at a certain point and progress from there in some kind of semi-predictable way. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Are you talking about like reincarnation, like coming into another life and picking up where you left off, or?
Well, actually, no, I hadn't thought about it beyond this lifetime, but that's a whole, I just want to have that conversation now, because that's fascinating to me. That actually, I think, would overlay this one. I think that in terms of a level of, and this is a word I don't particularly care to use, but I have already, is the awakening part. Because it's like, it seems that there are some people who are really closed off, who I can tell are sensitive, that they have intuitive gifts, they may have psychic gifts, they are not ready to open up completely to them, but there are certain things that they are willing to hear. And then that expands from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about in respect to that, whether there's a spiritual progression coming from that perspective, correct?
Yes.
That, if I'm understanding that
Yep.
correctly? Okay. What is mine? I've never thought about that. For me, I've always thought of, I do know people that are, in the same boat where you can tell that they're intuitive and they're not, I guess, they're either not realizing it or they don't want to believe it, and or they don't give credence to it. And I believe it's probably just some internal, just not blocks, but beliefs that they're struggling with and they have to work through in order for them to even go to that route. And sometimes when we're living in our present incarnation, we're not here to do that kind of work or do that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I'd call that spiritual progression though, so I never really thought about that. I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more.
Well, and I'm going to think about the leaving off in a past life and coming back to pick up that that longer path. I mean, I do personally suspect that, or that there were things we didn't do in a past life that we wanted to and are coming in another reincarnation, another carnation to explore those more, or maybe even do the same thing differently. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I thought you're referring to. 'Cause I feel as well that you're gonna, when you reincarnate, you come back with, it's almost as if, let's say, for example, you have A to Z steps to complete to master a skill, right? And in one lifetime, you've gone through A through M. So then when you go into the next lifetime, you pick up where you left off and you've already accumulated what you've had, or you have the knowledge and the abilities from that previous life that still comes in with you, and then you just kind of continue on. But that's pretty much a simple way to explain it. But I believe to a certain extent, we come back with whatever we worked on and how far we gotten, that comes back with us. And sometimes it depends on what we want to experience that would dictate what would happen and how we use that. You know what I mean? So it depends on what lessons we were looking to learn or experiences we were looking to experience in the lifetime that would determine whether you were going to pick up where you left off on that. So for the person that is intuitive but not awoke or like realizing it, perhaps they had that ability, they were doing the work in the prior incarnation, then when they came into this present one, they decided to do something different, but they really didn't want to acknowledge that side of themselves, and they just wanted to kind of go through life without having to tap into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So hopefully that makes
Well,
sense.
I think so. It got me to thinking. I love the idea of, I already developed that skill, but there's something else I want to do in this lifetime. So that's there, but I'm not going to pay attention to it.
Right.
But it makes me also think of a friend of mine who she's had some past life regressions, and one of them is something where it was a tragic outcome, let's just say. And I mean, there's more than one of my friends who have had that in past lives. And I think I have as well. And so a part of it, with that particular friend, though, it was that everybody else in her group had perished, and violently, and she escaped. And so there was almost like a survivor syndrome or something in this life that has, almost plagued her, where she doesn't seem to be able to progress beyond it. And so that's where I come up with it's almost like at some point, do we achieve a full, whole state of being that combines all of those different pieces of a puzzle, let's say. And so she had that piece of a puzzle that was violent and tragic, and yet she survived. But because of that kind of underlying memory or recollection, she has a harder time progressing in her life today. So I'm just...
Okay.
I hope you're okay with this conversation. I'm really enjoying it personally.
No, I'm completely fine with it. I do have that just makes me think that perhaps, because when past lives come up, that's only because there's something that needs to be shown for us to work through. And you've said that she has survival. What was it?
I just said survival syndrome or whatever. Survival guilt.
Yeah, survival syndrome. So that's something that that past life came up for a reason, and for her to work through that survival guilt or survival, because she brought that energy with her into this life, and so it's affecting her, and she didn't know why, and she probably didn't realize that that was even something that was going on with her. But then when she obviously became aware of it, because you're aware of it, and I'm assuming you guys talked about that
frequently.
But so she's at this point. Right. So she's at this point where, okay, I have awareness. I have this past life that I know this is where it came from, and so now it's just to work through it and to kind of release that energy and so she can get past it. So it's being shown for a reason. You know what I mean? So even though it was traumatic and tragic, there's a reason why it came up, because we when we incarnate into this lifetime. We definitely come in with that amnesia, that veil that comes, that kind of blinds us to whatever our experiences were, so that we can just live and experience this life. But when those past lives seep in, especially when we're seeking it, what comes forward is that which most serves us. And so she needs to work through that, what she doesn't need to if she doesn't want to, but something for her to work through that energy so that she can release it. And then when she does live the rest of her life, she can live, free of that, and then incarnate into another life. She doesn't.
Where it's not a focal point of everything. Okay, there you are. You froze for a second.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit and just ask a little bit more about, so you'd mentioned a book that you're reading right now. Are there books that really have been impactful for you throughout your growth experience?
Good question. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm like a bookworm to begin with.
I should say books or movies or thought leaders. Any of that stuff is fine.
Okay.
Videos, whatever.
I want to say what first was most helpful for me in the beginning was The Lightworker's Way by Doreen Virtue. Even though Doreen took a different turn, and a lot of people got turned off by her change of direction, she still served a purpose when she did. And The Lightworker's Way is a book that really opened my eyes and allowed me and bring awareness to connecting the dots of my past, the stuff that I've experienced. I and I'm trying to remember the for whatever reason I am not remembering the channeling book. I believe You Are a Channel there's I think I only remember the name, one of the names of, there's two authors, and I believe is Roman. I'm not sure. I'll give you the information. I don't.
Well, that's okay. I can try to find it too, and if I can't, I'll let you know. And you froze again, so hopefully you can still. There you go. You're unfrozen again.
I did turn off my notifications on my phone, but it's still coming through, and that's why you're getting it. I'm like, I turned it off. Why is it coming through? I don't understand it. Let's see. And like book and movies. And there's like a slew of books that really helped me, but those are the pivotal ones, I guess, in the beginning, and then. Movies, I love The Matrix. It gives you that sense of the ultra reality, the duality of it all, and living in this realm and being more aware of at a higher perspective. You have also Stigmata, because Stigmata, the most that addressed religion, because I was born and raised Catholic. Okay, we went to church regardless if it was Catholic or not. It depended on what neighborhood we lived in, because if there wasn't a Catholic church nearby, we'd go to wherever was there, because we had to go to church. But for me, when I went to church, it wasn't because I just didn't feel right. It wasn't because it repelled me. I just felt like I didn't need to. You didn't need to be there to talk to God. I didn't see the point of talking to a father so that he can deliver the messages to God. I'm like, why get rid of the middleman? And
exactly.
I can talk to God directly. So Stigmata was that put in, it just like, oh my God, yes, so that was like a transformation for me. So that was one of the ones that I loved. So yeah, those are actually the two. I can't think of anything else. There was a few more, but as far as I'm trying to remember if there was any people besides the mentors and teachers that I've come across are the ones that I have followed. One of them is Crystal. I do have I'm drawing a blank right now with because I follow so many people. You know how you kind of lose track. So yeah, in the beginning, I think I don't know if you remember if you've even followed her, but it's called Inner Whispers, and I believe she channels the entity or the being
Oh.
Veronica. Is it? Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Wow.
so she was one of the first channels I followed actually. So I followed her for a long time before I even started. Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Interesting.
and besides that, I mean, um, media. I resonate with trying to remember who I follow right now. And no, I'm not, for whatever reason, I'm having a brain fart,
Well,
sorry.
that's totally okay.
I'm like, it's so many people.
Well, so when I post the show notes, I'll add the ones that you've mentioned right now, and then if there are others that you think of later, just send them to me and I'll add them later because I post these on my website because
Mhm,
then you can actually have a direct link to go to the place and it doesn't make 50
mhm.
million. I'm using 50 million today. I guess that's my number.
That's
Um,
that's perfect.
but I don't like adding them as individual comments. It just gets to be too much, especially when there's a lot of different things that are coming out. Stigmata is a movie I haven't
Yeah,
watched in such a long time. I'm really glad you brought that one up.
yeah. Actually, so I'm sorry,
Oh,
just
no.
because now it's coming to me.
Awesome.
So two people. All right. So I have Amy Allen, and she's like the medium that does the Dead Files. Have you ever seen that show,
Mm-mm.
that reality show?
Nope.
It's on Sci-Fi.
Okay.
Anyway, so she's the medium. She does walkthroughs in houses and helps people like rectify or find resolution to what's going on in their homes, energetically, with with the spirit world. I think she has phenomenal abilities, and she's so like I love the way she does things and how she's so connected, and so that's kind of my like hashtag goals.
Ooh, cool.
And the other one, coincidentally enough, his name actually it's somebody a name from the past. His name is John Edwards. You remember John Edwards, medium?
No.
He used to have a show actually on the main channels, like the public channels. He used to do mediumship on, and I forgot the name of the show. But funny thing about him is that I didn't like him at first. Like I caught his shows, I'm like, like I don't know if I like him. He's kind of cocky. And then I left it alone. And then when I started coming back to when I started on my path for mediumship, his book was one of the books I found. I was at a half price book, one of those books where you get for half
Yep.
prices, or a bookstore where you get half price on them. And found his book. I'm like, all right, I don't like this guy, but I'm gonna read this anyway. Something just told me to read it,
Yeah.
And I was just following obviously the guidance of my guides. And it was so triggering for me. Like I was like, oh, there would be moments where I'm like, oh my God, why am I reading this? Like he's so like I just didn't like. He was just kind of cocky to me, and I don't know if it was just my hang up or what. But at the end, when I was learning a lot about it and a lot about mediumship and just the psychic work in his book. And at the end, it was very informative. It opened my eyes, and I just got past the hangups. And I think he's really good at what he does. So I got to give him props for that. And that's one that I have to say. So
Now, is he the guy who does the mediumship with celebrities? Somebody had mentioned him. It may not have been him though, because I don't
I
remember
don't
the
think
name.
so. I think you're talking about John
Oh,
Tyler. Is that the
yeah,
young guy?
that's the one. Yeah.
Young guy?
I haven't
Mm-hmm.
watched any of those. So, I am married to somebody who he represents the guy who I think he's got some pretty amazing intuitive and empath skills that he's closed off to. And he does not like me to introduce things that scare him, in which mediumship does, into, our TV viewing ensemble. Now, Harry Potter's
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? But, I don't, he's okay kind of with the Matrix, but I don't know that he'd be comfortable with Stigmata. He did like Dogma though. So,
Oh,
there's hope, but
I like
me
Dama.
too. Yeah, and that one is actually calling to me. There's something going on. So my daughter is in a middle school or entering middle school, but it's one for kids who she has some issues with math. So it's a school that helps with that. And then their goal at this school is to transition into a more conventional school. And one of the ones we're
Mm.
considering that where a lot of people from her current school go is a Catholic school. I was not raised Catholic, but my grandmother was, and like her whole family very Catholic, and her sister was a nun, and my dad was raised Catholic and stepped away because they wouldn't marry him and my mom in the church because she was divorced. And so for him, that was like, forget it. Okay, I'm never going back, and he never did. But my grandmother used to take me to Catholic services and things like that. And she'd let me participate in communion, which I think is now, I mean, I didn't know at the time. I guess that's that was kind of a faux pas, but I don't think she knew she was doing it, but I guess she was hoping I'd embrace it in a different way. But I went to all kinds of different churches while my mom was trying to find a place that fit for her, and she never really did. But I got all of these different kinds of experiences. And then when I was older, it was like I started to really recognize the dogma involved with a lot of it. And like you, was like, well, I have my own level of spirituality that I pursue. I don't feel the need to go there and do these rituals and things. And for those of you who do, that's totally fine. For me, it wasn't a fit. But this Catholic school, it brings back some interesting, expectations. And we're not Catholic. I would love for her to have exposure to religion in general in a way that we haven't offered. Yeah. So there's some balance there that I think can occur. But it's like it's my hang up. I mean, my husband's like, you're kind of really hung up on this. And I'm like, I know. And it's like, I really want to get over it. And so it's like,
I can relate to that.
We're going to go there this next week to tour this school. And it's just there are people who are Jewish who are apparently considering that school. So, I know they have issues with the religion too, and talking to the parents, and they're like, if we can get past the Catholic part, it'd be a really, really good school. But from a school perspective for students who aren't participating in that religion, it's bringing up all kinds of really interesting things for me and other parents who seem to have these kind of hangups. So I don't even know why I went there, other than you saying you were raised.
I know I can totally relate to that, because even though I felt that way, I did have my daughter go through the beginnings of Catholicism, because it gives you a foundation. I want them to decide for themselves what they want to do, and if they want to follow religion, that's fine. If they want to go, if they don't, and they want to do their own thing, that's fine too. But I wanted to give them a base to start from, and so I started with my first daughter. We started in the Catholic Church. She went to Sunday school. She went through all the the A through Z
communion and stuff. What is it called?
And so she decided on her own.
Confirmation, right?
Confirmation, right. And so I allowed her to make her own decision. But and the reason why I did that is because I had that myself, and that gave you kind of a perspective and somewhere to start from. So, but then when my second daughter came around, I really, it kind of just didn't. I just started teaching her on metaphysics, so it kind of went a different route with her. So I don't know. But I can totally relate to that. I understand that, and there's a balance. You got to go with your gut. You got to go with like what's right and what fits for your situation too. So I think that there is a balance with that.
Yeah, and for me, I think that balance is key. And so my daughter is a Pisces, which I didn't know really anything about that before. But I mean, to the same extent that I'm exploring it now. But I understand that they're very, they have a tendency towards spiritual and psychic and metaphysical things. And so I've introduced a lot of what I know to her in different capacities. She's 11, so to see what gravitates towards her and things. But she understands auras, and she gets the whole, like, she knows how to create a bubble. I'm not
Awesome.
I don't always advocate those types of bubbles, but for this one particular purpose in the past, I'm like, you can do this, and she does. She's like, I'm doing my bubble right now, Mom. And a little crystal wand to ward off scary monsters in her room and stuff like that I started, and now she does. And then trying to help her learn how to do self-healing. I'm absolutely positive she's a healer. She's got the tingliest hands ever.
Wow.
She can touch me, and within 5 minutes, the headache is gone. And I'm like, whoa.
Nice.
Yeah. So there's that, but that religious foundation part, I have that same philosophy you do about having her. I really want her to explore all different ones and have her make a choice if that's a thing for her or not. And there's a part of me that's kind of like, if she goes to this Catholic school, she may actually really embrace it in a way, because there's some structure to it. And I don't know. I just keep getting that in the back of my mind that, okay, it's your thing, and it may actually be a really good thing for her to experience at a deeper level than anything I would be able to provide for her. And So it's
Right,
like
right.
when we visit the school, we'll see. I have to do my own little preparation to make sure I'm, clear and balanced. And then and have the right mindset around it. It's like, okay, this I'm the one who's
Mhm.
leaning more towards that school than others. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
yeah,
Amazing.
exactly. So thank you for your perspective on that. That's really, really helpful.
Oh, you're welcome.
Um, well, let's see. We have about 17 minutes left. And one of the other questions I like to ask is really what's at the top of your mind right now? What's been going on in your life as far as, and where do the skills that you have amassed, in all of your practice, how do they weave into your daily life?
Well, it's, you know what, I lovingly call it a hot mess. I just go as I'm guided, let's see. Basically, well, it's been going on in my life. So, I mean, I know that music moves me, and
Mm-hmm.
I love working with a lot of sound vibration. That affects you. Being an empath, it affects you at a very physical level. I mean, so that's something that I've been working with a lot more lately. I haven't really, I've always been drawn to that, but I haven't really been working with it as much as I am, in the recent past. I mean, it's been a long and arduous road with just being brave enough to come out of the closet too. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
finally at a point in my life where I'm like not caring what people think, that what I am, and not hiding behind, just a facade,
Mm-hmm.
basically, that, I'm one way and I'm really doing this on the other side, or on the flip side. So this year's become more of a merging of both parts of me coming in together, and it's coming to the forefront where you're just seeing where most people just saw one
Mm-hmm.
side.
Yeah.
So, and it's all about also the theme for me always has been balance. Try to create a balance, because at one point or another there's always kind of like a teetering happening, and it's always that balancing game that I'm playing, and I'm learning how to do the balance thing more so lately, this year as well, and just knowing what works with that. So, but as far as like the modalities that I've been able to learn and utilize in my practice, it's something that I've been working on since, I don't know, it's probably been like 11 years. I started off with training as an angel intuitive practitioner. Then did the Reiki training, became a master teacher with that, recently, actually, because I took levels 1 and 2 and 3, like probably back to like, one after the other. And then I waited a while before I went on to the teacher level. And then went on to started feeling the call to do, 'cause Akashic
Mm.
Records always been something that has been, the call that just called me to, just because I love everything about the soul.
That's probably another notification coming in. Just guessing.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Oh no, that's
Sorry.
okay.
I'm so sorry. I turned it off. I swear.
Yeah, something I learned.
So I love,
Oh, I was just going to say, I turn off
God.
every single individual notification as well as notifications now, because I used to get them too.
Yeah.
It's like, well, when you turn them off, aren't they
Okay.
supposed to stop? That's the point, right?
Right. Right. I mean, I have never had a problem with it until
Oh,
now, and I think I must have gotten an update that doesn't matter anymore. So I'm gonna have to go through every single one of them. So anyway, like for me, I was so I just have a passion for knowing about the
mm,
soul at a soul level before you even come into this life, like the dynamics
mm,
behind it, like the contracts that we make. Why do we choose the things that we do? So that naturally that led me on to past lives, and then onto the Akashic
cool.
records, and so that passion led into the modality that I use right now, and that's it's called soul realignment. And so what that does is I find out about like the different aspects that you brought into past lives, and find out about your current life, what you decided to do. And so it's kind of like being a bookworm. I just love to go in there and just kind of dig, and just find out about people. And I love hearing about people's stories, especially
Me
like
too.
on a bigger scale. And that's my passion. So and it kind of with the Reiki healing and the angels, and that kind of all just blends in naturally.
Sure.
And so it's like I don't do one more than the other. And I find that I go through phases of attracting people that want a certain, session or a certain healing, and then that's kind of a theme, and then that theme kind of correlates to something I need to work on for myself, and
Yep, it works the same way for me too. I was thinking you do soul realignment and I do human realignment. It's I'm more limited at this time to this lifetime when I work with people, but it's the Akashic records have definitely entered my radar lately, as has astrology. Because I'm really, I mean, this year in particular, those energies have been so strong, and I'm really starting to want to know more beforehand. Because when I've looked it up, in varying instances when I felt, really, really upset about something or uncertain or unconfident, that happened just the other day. It was like all of these energies are popping in, and I couldn't figure out where they were coming from. I still don't exactly know where they were coming from, other than I looked it up and it's like there's some planet who's got squared, and I still don't really know the terminology, but all it said was something like feelings of, confidence and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, something with Saturn. Awesome.
right.
I'm glad I looked it up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's fun how when we feel things that it's kind of in tune with the energies, even though you don't know what's going on. Because that's the way I am. I'm like, oh, yeah. Now, at hindsight, you're like, oh, that makes sense because I'm going through that. So totally get that. And honestly, that sounds like a natural. I would definitely see you going that route too.
Yeah.
It's going to organically. And that's how it happens, that you get these little hits of which way you wanted to go, and it'll keep coming and coming and coming, and so you go that route.
Yep.
So definitely see you going that route.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's so funny because I've done all of this education, right? And I've done these high level research things and stuff like that. And now I don't want to have to learn something technical. And so astronomy sounds technical to me. So until I get it in my head that I can look at it differently. And I have all these techniques for mindset, but I don't always apply them to myself as often as I should. Or would like to, I should, and it's like, the more I check into it, it's like, well, at some point it's going to start making sense, I think, because I'll start picking up some patterns. And when that happens, then I'll want to dig in deeper, and then it won't feel technical. Whereas right now it's like, whoa, there's so much information out there too. It's like, it's a bit intimidating. Yeah. I wanted to, if you're okay with it, I'd really love to go back and talk a little bit more about the sound vibration stuff that you're interested in. That is a huge interest of mine as well. I do like a Chakra Pro app that does certain frequencies every night. It's something I do because it's quick, and you can do it with like waves or something in the background. And so it just helps me from a sound perspective. But I'd like to hear more about what you're doing.
Well, it's funny enough, I've been working with the solfeggio frequencies lately, and that's something that I've noticed, and I'm just shocked that I've never really gotten into that. I've always known about it, but funny thing is that that's based off the Gregorian chants, and you can use the Gregorian chants for clearing homes, and that's something that I've always loved Gregorian chants, and I purchased a CD like a long time ago. And then when kind of coming back full circle, I started working with the frequencies because I just felt like the need to like feel the vibrations and work on specific areas of my life with it. Just kind of a realignment, kind of like a tune-up, So I was feeling with that. But the thing is that it's a quick, and I found that it's a quick realignment, a quick reset for us, especially as empaths. If you're like busy and you don't have time to kind of like just reset, and just taking like 15-20 minutes. I know like a couple weeks ago I did not meditate, but I did I listened to the frequencies, and that definitely did the trick for the whole entire week. And so it's like it's kind of like in hindsight where you think, oh, it's not going to do much, but then it's like, oh my God, like this is something. There's something there. And so you start looking into the facts and then start connecting the dots, and it's amazing. But as far as that, so I mean, I've never really meditated with guided meditations. I always liked to meditate either silent or do it with just music. I couldn't listen to somebody speak because it would just throw me off, or I'd be like 5 steps ahead of them. So it'll be a little annoying. And so there was always a tie with music, and it always felt I was always able to like go higher or that much faster, and also just come out of it feeling better, you know? So yeah.
Interesting. So I have never heard of those frequencies before. Certainly I've heard of the Gregorian chants, and I think I have a CD with that too. So I know that you have your program coming up at 2:00. So I'm just going to plug it again and say that Maria is going to be talking more about these, as well as empaths and highly sensitive people and the differences between, at 2:00 today. So if you have a chance to check her out, I would definitely encourage it. I may be listening in the sidelines while I type up notes and things like that, but because I'm really interested in this information. And so, you know, what I find, I mentioned this in Thread Theory, which I did on Thursday. That's kind of a new program of mine. And I do music entrainment, which for me, it really helps pull me out of a mood. And I encourage that for other people, is that because music has vibration, right? And for me, I like to sing. And that helps my throat chakra, which has always been the tightest chakra for me. So I can tell, like right now, I could handle like singing something. Maybe Fiona Apple, she's got a bit of angst, but I don't feel angst as much as I really love. She has such a wonderful singing voice, and she goes all over the place that it really opens up my throat chakra. And but so I sometimes when I'm feeling, I'm trying to create, and I haven't fully done it yet, playlists for different moods. So like if I'm sad or feeling low or down on myself, those require different kind of songs than if I'm angry or frustrated. And so like when I'm angry and frustrated, this is what I said in Thread Theory. It's like I'll listen to heavy kind of grunge music. Like Nine Inch Nails is often my go-to, like the first album. It's like I start with that. And then I work my way up, and by the end, I'm singing happy music, and like India Aria's one that there's a couple of songs of hers that are really empowering. Well, most of her songs are empowering, I think, but that just brings me to this much higher level and frequency, and it clears all of my chakras while I'm moving up through these songs. Plus, they're songs I like to listen to and sing to. So it's like this really, Spotify's an awesome way to do that. Create those little soundtracks.
I'm gonna have to use that more often.
I find,
and I can totally relate to that. I do the same thing. If I'm like, it's like almost as if music helps you feel your feelings and just kind of like feel it, be present with it, and then release it. And so I do the same thing. Like if I'm sad, I'll listen to something that'll make me bawl. And so then by then when I'm done, I'll go on to the next mood, and I'll pull my way up. And I go from like classical music to heavy metal to just the gamut of all the alternative music. It's just like I'm so you're just so connected with all of them, and being an empath too. Sometimes like if you don't catch yourself, you can be in a fine mood and you're being okay mood, but then you get like a sad song and then you're bawling.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and I feel,
but I can definitely,
it's that whole if I'm sad and I know I have to meet myself at that emotion. Sometimes people try to do the opposite of what they're feeling, and that's never ever worked for me. I have to go where I am. And so then if I'm in a sad mood, I have to be at a place where I can cry. Because if I'm listening to it on the way to pick my daughter up from school, let's say, and then I'm walking in there and I have tears going down my face, it's gonna, I don't care that much what people think, but I don't want to have to answer to it. I don't want people to ask me about it and everything. Right. So it's like, maybe I could do that once I get home. But the anger ones I want to listen to on the way to school, so that by the time I'm at school, I'm happy.
And you've released all that energy, and you're feeling lighter and happier. And you're like, oh, that's like the load's been lifted off. So,
and I love that. Some people. I use the word resonate all the time, in dissonance and all of the sound related words. And I think that maybe there are some people who are really inspired by visual things, and I'm a very visual person, but I've learned more and more that I'm an audio person, probably more so because words are so important to me, and tone. Oh my gosh, tone is a huge, that was an empath thing, because my dad had tone and my husband has tone, but he's kind of tone deaf, so he does not realize his tone. It's really, it would be funny if it weren't frustrating, because my daughter and I are both like, that was a horrible tone. No, it wasn't. But anyway, it's like, but so tone and pitch and music and all of those things are such a huge part of my life that it's like, that's where I go to heal. Whereas other people, I think, sometimes go to, well, writing is important and it's important to me too, but the sound is what heals me, and the visuals do, and writing does, but sound is my go-to first. And so I just think it's.
I agree with that. I'm right there with you with that, for sure.
Well, I am looking at my clock, so we have like 2 minutes. So, and then I know you have to be on in a half an hour. So I just want to thank you so much for this conversation. I really had a great time. I love talking with you. And and this was really, Maria and I haven't spoken to each other directly very often. So this was just a really great way to get to know you too. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on, sharing your wisdom.
We have so much in common and realize that. For sure.
I know. Well, we'll definitely have to talk again, and then I'll have you on the show again sometime in the future too. You know, after a number of different things. But I like to have repeat guests. Laura Lee was one that I had on a couple of times. She was just really fun to do these conversations with, and so I'll keep bringing back people as well. So anyway.
All right, sounds like fun.
Yeah, so thank you again. And again, check out Maria's show in a half an hour if you have time. And otherwise, check out that replay. It'll be, I can tell, just a wonderful thing. My timer is going off there. And thanks to all of you for joining us today and or on the replay. And I will go through all the comments in just a few minutes. So we didn't get to them during the show, but you will be read and heard. So wishing everybody a wonderful weekend and a great show for you, Maria, too.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay,
right,
take care.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.